Let's give a warm round of applause for our first speaker, Alex Sparrow, who's come all the way from the UK.
Thank you, Matty. Cheers. Hello. Is that the US hemp building industry? Isn't there a lot of you? Fancy seeing you here. Okay, I'm excited too. This feels like something a bit historic happening here this weekend. So, yeah, as Matty says, I've come to you from the UK, from a company called Uk Hempcrete, and I found out yesterday morning that I'm giving the opening keynote as opposed to the closing one, which is what I thought when I wrote the presentation. So I flicked through the slides this morning, and I think it still works. But basically, anything that's missing from my presentation, the guys afterwards will fill in, you know? Because when you're writing the summing up presentation, your main concern is repeating things that other people have said. But so I'm here today to really give you some thoughts on hempcrete industry, the market for hempcrete, and hempcrete experts, okay? Before I do that, I'll tell you a little bit about my company. And I'm going to be throwing in a few quotes as we go along today from people who can sort of give my message in a more clear and articulate way than I can. So this is kind of at the center of our philosophy as a company, really. And our USP, if you like, is that we started out by building a tiny hempcrete building, and then we just carried on. You know, two of us started out. We carried on building slightly bigger things and slightly bigger things. And that was 10, 11 years ago. And now here we are today, and we're still continuing to build with hempcrete. So our kind of perspective on the industry really comes from the bricklayers and the labourers, and it comes from the experience of doing it on site every day. And from that, we've grown to hopefully bigger and better things, but we kind of keep that philosophy at the centre of everything we do. So as a company, we've always been focused on the fabric of buildings and the choices that we make when we're choosing what materials to put into our buildings can have a huge impact on not only the health and well-being of the occupants, but also the implications for the wider community, for the global community. In terms of carbon emissions, I'm going to give you a UK stat here, because that's the one I know off by heart. The UK construction industry contributes, this is government figures, contributes roughly 7% of UK total GDP, and it contributes around 50% of total UK carbon emissions, okay? Now I checked, had a quick look on your government's websites and did my best with systems that I'm unfamiliar with, and I think here your construction industry is about 3 to 4% of GDP and about 42% of total carbon emissions. So it's a similar kind of relationship. So as you know, there's a global movement ever increasing to reduce the carbon emissions that we as a planet are putting out. And so it's really surprising that over the last, 30 years that we've been increasingly focusing on this, the construction industry has been slow to respond. Even the people who are setting the targets are not really focusing on the huge impact that we can have just by changing what we do in the construction industry. And I haven't even mentioned waste, okay? But I didn't look those figures up for the US, but in the UK, I think it's around 60% of our total waste as a country, okay? So clearly, what we do in the construction industry has a huge impact on our potential for sustainable growth as a planet. So based on that understanding, what we're doing is we're choosing materials that are both high performance and carbon sequestering. And really they're carbon sequestering because all of the materials we use, and it's not just hempcrete, but all of the materials that we use are bio-based. So we're using hemp, we're using straw, we're using lime, we're using earth, we're using timber, we're using natural fiber insulations, which might be hemp fiber, it might be wood fiber, it might be cork. And we're combining those in the building to create an environment that is non-toxic, especially in the case of hempcrete, because of the lime in hempcrete, it doesn't burn, it doesn't rot, and pests don't eat it. So there's no additional chemical treatment needed to prevent any of those things. And the introduction of chemicals to our building materials is one of the main reasons that we're creating homes that are full of materials which off-gas into the internal space and have are implicated in things from asthma to cancer. Okay, there's some studies that have been done in London, which is currently one of the most polluted cities in the world through diesel fumes, and quite often indoor air quality testing is showing that the air inside our homes is more polluted than the air outside on the busy London streets. So this is a huge public health issue. Because our materials that we use were once living things, they're naturally vapor permeable. So like our bodies, they were once full of water, and the structure of their cells and their fibers is such that water can be absorbed and released through the fabric of the building. So there's a little bit of a change of thinking for the construction industry, who since the Second World War has been trying to make things waterproof, keep water out. Only recently understanding that if you succeed, which they never do, but if you succeed, then you're also keeping water in. So the moisture that we create inside homes by breathing, cooking, washing, can't pass out through the fabric. So it's usually, unless you have a very sophisticated ventilation system, it's usually condensing somewhere within the fabric or on the internal skin of the fabric and creating the perfect conditions for black mold bacteria to thrive. Okay, so almost by default, the materials that we're using are locally grown. They're abundant, renewable materials. They're usually recyclable, fit very well within the circular economy. And also, partly because of the companies that are producing these products, but partly because of the effects that I've talked about, they provide a very positive social and environmental impact. And by using those materials, that's allowed us to first start building, creating healthy, high-performance buildings, designing and building specialist thermal envelopes, and more latterly, providing training, consultancy to other people. So a few years ago, we wrote a book called the Hempcrete book, and that's been very well received. And so now we get to do nice things like be taken to Ketchum, Idaho, to talk to lots of people who are also on this journey with us, okay? So what I want to make clear at the beginning is that I've not come to talk to you about, from a position of, this is me telling you how to do hempcrete. I forgot to ask at the beginning, can I just see how many architects we've got in the room? Okay, put your hands right up because you're in the dark. So, okay, how many builders? Oh, nice, okay. And how many people have had hands-on experience with hempcrete? Great, okay. And how many people are total hempsters? Yeah. Okay, all right, so really I'm here to talk to you guys about my experience in the industry, and hopefully we'll get a chance later during coffee to talk about your own experiences. The first question, and I saw someone asking this on a Facebook group recently, is it an industry? Okay, and so my thoughts on that really are, well actually, I've always talked about the UK hempcrete industry as if it's a thing, and I think now it is. But we're 2019, so this is the 20th year of hempcrete buildings in the UK. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the history of that in a second. But just an initial thought. So I've come to you today from a tiny country on the other side of the Atlantic called England. And in the middle of that, woo! And in the middle of that tiny country is a tiny village called Cromford. And in the middle of the tiny village called Cromford is a tiny company called UK Hempcrete. And the other interesting thing about Cromford is just over here, so about 300 yards from our office, is the first factory in the world. Okay? So for those of you, I don't know how much English history you guys got, but for those of you who remember, anybody know Arkwright and his spinning jenny? Yeah, Richard Arkwright? 1771, Richard Arkwright built in Cromford in Derbyshire the first water-powered factory. And he invented a machine for spinning cotton and a machine for carding cotton that were powered by water. And there it is, still standing today. So yeah, it's our fault, guys. We started the Industrial Revolution. I'm sorry about that. And 100 years later on, Ralph Waldo Emerson said something which I'd like you all just to read, because I think it's got profound meaning for the people who are sat in this room today. Okay, so I think we are at the beginning of this hempcrete industry, but I don't ever forget that the Industrial Revolution was started around a plant, okay? And so we talk about this century being the biotech century, and I'm really excited about that prospect. But so let's have a little look at the UK hempcrete industry then. So 1992 was when we started growing industrial hemp in the UK. And in conversations last night, it's sort of brought home to me that we've had a completely the opposite experience of you guys almost, you know? And this is how long we've been waiting, by the way, for you lot to come on board. because we know that when America comes on board with something, it gets big, okay? So what we've not had ever in the UK is recreational cannabis, legally grown. We had a very short period of decriminalization, or at least a lower category a few years ago, but that lasted about 2 years. We've never been able to extract for CBD, and we're still fighting that battle now. So we've had this experience where we've just had industrial hemp for the last 20 years. So when they first licensed it, they were giving out £1,200 an acre subsidies to farmers to grow it, to stimulate R&D, and you don't get that anymore. Key thing, in 1992, this company called Hemcore Limited incorporated, and they built a £3 million processing plant in Suffolk in the east of England. And they co-opted farmers all over the UK to grow hemp, bring it to this central processing plant, because the UK is really tiny, yeah? And then they processed it, and they decorticated, because they were growing fibre crop. So the fibres were mostly being sold to the automotive industry, to BMW, to reinforce car panels or trim panels. And the herd was being used for animal bedding and for building. So in 1999, these two houses were built in a little town in Suffolk by a housing association that was building some social housing. And what they did was they built all the other housing from the kind of conventional construction in the UK, which is concrete block with a layer of insulation and then a brick facing, because we like bricks in England. And they built these hempcrete houses to exactly the same form, and this was a complete experiment, really. So this company, Lime Technology, had brought hempcrete over from France, and they wanted to see how hempcrete would compare to conventional materials. And that was monitored by the Building Research Establishment, which is an organization which kind of does what it says on the tin. And ever since then, really, the results of that study were that the hempcrete buildings perform much better, and that they met all the requirements of the UK building code. All right. So ever since then, really, either UK government-funded projects or EU-funded projects have assisted the emerging hempcrete industry to develop an evidence base for how hempcrete buildings perform. And I think that's a real key driver in the industry. So yeah, I came in slightly after this. I came in 2008. So in my mind, and there may be people here who know better than me, Lime Technology started selling Lwast's hempcrete binder in the UK, or producing it under license, in around 2004, 2005. When I checked on Companies House last week, apparently they incorporated in 2015. So I'm not sure what was going on there, but possibly they were always a partnership and they decided to go limited just before they hit the wall in 2016. Anyway, 2008, as you're all too painfully aware, big financial crash. The automotive industry took a dive. Hemcore went bust overnight. Okay, they had all this fiber, they had all this herd. The fiber is obviously the cash crop, really. The herd used to be the waste, now it's called a co-product. But they just weren't diverse enough in the marketplace, okay? And in fact, maybe that's unfair. Maybe the market itself wasn't diverse enough. So they weren't able to survive, and they were bought out by Lime Technology, and Hemcore becomes Hemp Technology. So now Lime Technology are selling their hempcrete binder and their own hemp shiv, hemp herds. Shiv is what we call it in the UK. Now, somewhere in here springs up this thing called American Lime Technology. See what they did there? Clever, huh? So again, there may be people in this room who can educate me about this later on. I'm assuming that, because I've seen videos of Ian, who's the MD of Lime Technology, or was the MD of Lime Technology. I've seen videos of him in North Carolina, building the first, or assisting with building the first hempcrete house in the US, to my knowledge. So there was this little spark where it crossed the Atlantic shortly before Lime Technology started experiencing trouble in the UK. But along the way, in 2010, quite significantly, the last Labour government in the UK funded something called the Renewable House Programme, and they gave to 12 developers different multiples of £1 million funding, match funding, to build a mixture of social and market housing using sustainable, renewable materials. Okay, and that was interpreted differently by different developers. There was there were some community developments, so there were different models for the actual development process. There was some great straw bale panel developments built, but 7 of those 12 were hempcrete developments. Okay, and if you want to know more about the program, I can recommend this review of the whole program that was written by Tom Woolley. But basically, yeah, between 2006 and 2013, Lime Technology were essentially hempcrete, the hempcrete industry in the UK. And a lot of hempcrete buildings got built. And I mean a lot of hempcrete buildings, okay? Because what Lime Technology did was they licensed this technology from France, and they got a lot of investors really excited about it, and they took on lots of venture capital, and they went in really big, which is the way to go in the construction industry, okay? And they did lots and lots of commercial scale development. So when we started out as a tiny little company, building the odd extension here or the odd garden office here, we went to Lime Technology to buy our hempcrete materials. And we said, can we buy some hempcrete materials? And they said, no, you can't. And we said, oh, I thought you sold hempcrete materials. And they said, yes, we do, but we don't just sell them to anybody because you might mess it up, and then that would be bad for hempcrete. So we had to go along and do a little training course, and then they sold us some hempcrete materials, and we built an extension, and we thought, this stuff's amazing. And then we built something else, a garden office for a friend, and then we put a website up saying we were hempcrete builders. And 2 weeks later, people were phoning up saying, can you build a school in Suffolk? I'm like, probably not. So for a long time, there was Lime Technology who were building housing estates, brewery warehouses, okay? This is the Adnams Brewery in Suffolk. breweries, wine merchants love hempcrete because one of the properties of hempcrete is it keeps this static internal temperature without the need for heating or cooling systems. So if you're in the brewery or vintner business, it's perfect for cutting your costs. They built huge department stores. This is a hempcrete. This is panelized prefab panels. This one here is wet cast on-site hempcrete combined with hempcrete blocks. So there was Slime Technology doing all of this big stuff, and there was us, messing around with people's extensions. This is a building that will be familiar to a lot of you. Steve held the IHBA symposium here 5 years ago, something like that, 6 years ago. So this is the WISE building, which stands for the Wales Institute of Sustainable Education. This is the internal, one of the internal views of the building. It's essentially, it's at a place called the Centre for Alternative Technology in Wales, and so this is basically a university building. It's got this dramatic lecture theatre here, which has an internal structural rammed earth wall surrounded by a hempcrete external wall. It's got a bar, it's got a cafeteria, it's got student accommodation, it's got recreational area, offices, etc. This is one of the first, so this I think was 2006, Steve, am I right? A little bit later maybe? Something like that. This is one of the first spray-applied hempcrete buildings in the UK. And then there was, some of these are the Renewable House Programme funded developments. This is one called Clayfields, which I quite like, quite attractive. That's shingle cladding, isn't it? And then, again, more of the Renewable House Programme. This is a particularly attractive one. This is the Triangle in Swindon, built by a guy called Kevin MacLeod, or his company. Kevin MacLeod, you may have, if you've ever watched the English Grand Designs, he's like it's like a popular self-build TV show. Kevin MacLeod is 100% hempcrete. Cut him and he bleeds hempcrete. And he's done a huge amount for public awareness. This one up here is the tallest, it's spray applied, so the tallest cast on-site building we've got in the UK, which is 5 stories, and that's the Sustainable Enterprise Centre at Bradford University. So yeah, from 2010 onwards, really, I've been standing at shows, and the first couple of years we were stood there, people were like, oh, can you smoke it? And then, but very quickly it was like, oh, you're the hempcrete guys, I need to talk to you, yeah? And as I said, a lot of that is down to this guy, just really selling it. He's got a huge profile media-wise. And this is a recent Grand Designs project, which is some clients of ours, or basically we did the render, we did his lime floor. But other than that, this guy, well, Paul and Blanca, Paul bought my book, came on a 2-day training course, and basically self-built himself a hempcrete house. Really slowly, but he did it, and it was featured on the program. So things like that are great. But I think probably the most important milestone really is from 2008 onwards, we start to get other people in the industry, apart from Lime Technology, and I think that's really key. So we're getting an increasing number of independent farmer processors, smaller hempcrete companies, and significantly, choices of hempcrete materials start appearing on the market. And that's when you really know that you're starting to build market. So what happened to Lime Technology then? I think there's a lot to unpack in Lime Technology, and we all learned a lot from Lime Technology. I think the market wasn't ready. Okay, the UK construction industry, I don't know about you guys, but our construction industry is firmly, they leave school at 16, they start working on a building site. That's their training. They carry on doing that till their back gives up, yeah? And anything that's new or challenging, whoa, hang on a minute, okay? So also the regulatory environment, I think that's changing slowly in the UK. It's much better in mainland Europe. But there needs to be, for people to invest in low-carbon technologies, they need to look around and see that government is encouraging that, to give them the confidence that if they invest, they're going to see a return on that investment. Lime Technology took venture capital early, and there's some advantages in that. They made a big splash, but they didn't end up keeping control of the company. They also did a lot of learning on the job, okay? And they jumped from precast blocks to cast on site to spray applied to structural panels, and they never really stayed on one thing long enough. They kind of learned by their mistakes and jumped on to the next thing. And I know they were ahead of the curve, but I think one of the issues and one of the things that stopped it being an industry actually was that they were trying to be all things. Okay, so for fans of The Wire, I think this is quite an important quote. Okay, to have an industry, you don't need one company doing hempcrete. You need all of these things. And as you guys start building your industry, you need to be focusing on all of it. The going out and building hempcrete buildings and getting them right, building them to a high quality and proving the concept in different states all over the US is really important. But without this, you're going to just carry on doing that for a long time. So people will be familiar with this, yeah? So Lime Technology, we're definitely over here, okay? Now I think we're probably somewhere around here now. It's really difficult to tell where you are on this early adopters thing. But when I was looking for a copy of this on the internet to put in the presentation, I found this one, which I love. Someone's taken it and gone full Princess Bride on it, okay? So I'm hoping we're sort of, maybe we're jumping over the trough of disillusionment, I don't know. There has been, since the demise of Lime Technology, there has been a bit of a trough of disillusionment in the UK. So while we're clambering out of that trough, I thought I'd give you my thoughts on the marketing and markets for hempcrete. And before I do that, I'd just like you to take a second and read this quote, which is one of my favorite. And I think that applies to, that's kind of my philosophy in life anyway, and it's obviously got a wider message about humans and their apparent fight with nature to prove themselves. And I think when we talk about markets, we're talking about business. And I don't know if anyone's noticed, but business has changed recently. And the younger generation are not going to put up with business for the sake of making money and business for the sake of self-glorification. Okay, and I think this one has particular relevance to natural building and to the bioeconomy, and this one should be on the wall in every architect's office, okay? So people often ask me how I sell hempcrete, okay? And my stock answer is I have absolutely no idea, okay? Because if you type hempcrete into Google, certainly in the UK, I'm what comes up. So I pick up the phone and people have already decided they want to use hempcrete, which is nice. But in reality, we go to a lot of shows, we get the message out there, we build buildings. I think, so basically we're a challenger industry, okay? And the industry that we're challenging is, okay, masonry construction, cement and concrete, but also synthetic insulations, okay, which is basically the petrochemical industry, okay? So if you're going to choose someone to go up against, the bigger they are, the harder they fall, right? But I think it's important when you're coming in as a challenger technology into an industry, I don't mean don't mention the hemp. Of course you've got to mention the hemp. But sell it, don't go in saying this is amazing because it's got hemp, or this is amazing because it sequesters carbon, or that's just a by the by, yeah? This stuff performs 100 times better than anything that is out there at the moment. So sell it on that, yeah? Just go in and say to them, look, this is the thing that will bring fuel bills down, that will give people healthy places to live. And by the way, it also is better than zero carbon, yeah? By the way, it also is a plant material that we can grow in 3 months, and that when we're finished with it, it'll compost back down and go straight back into the earth. I spend not a lot of time, but I gave some thought to what my customers, who they were, yeah? And so it's a bit of a Venn diagram. does overlap massively, but they tend to either be the deep green people who are looking for that low impact material, which hempcrete more than qualifies. We used to say it's a carbon negative material, but that sounds like a bad thing. So now we say it's a better than zero carbon material. There's also a huge group of people now who are thinking about the health and well-being aspect of the buildings that we create. I think we've built 7 houses for doctors now, so that should tell you something. If only about our prices. And then the other big group of people is people who live in old buildings that were built with lime. And in the UK, I'm sure you have a heritage building conservation organisation here in the States as well, but they won't let you put petrochemical synthetic insulations into buildings into historic buildings in the UK because they want the fabric of the building to remain vapor permeable. So hempcrete has a massive role to play there. And then really, because it's so accessible and low tech and the detailing is quite simple, it allows people like Paul to build his own house. It allows our clients, even if we're going to build the house for them, we're hempcreting one in Scotland, as I stand here, the client's getting involved. She's coming and doing some hempcrete with us while we're there building our house, and that really appeals. But I think we don't really want customers. Yeah, we want a movement. Okay, we've got to do this quickly. Yeah, we haven't got time. We've been talking about this for 30 years. We haven't got time to reduce carbon one house at a time. We need everybody to be doing this. So people might be familiar with this circle. Start with why. Don't know if you've seen that. If not, check out the TED Talk on YouTube. Basically, every organization anywhere in the world knows what they do. Okay? Some of them know how they do it, but very few people know, or at least very few people talk about why they do it, okay? And I think that's really important to get people behind us. So I don't know if you noticed, but that's what I did at the beginning, okay? This is the why, okay? This is why we're doing what we're doing. This is how we do it, okay? And this is what we do, okay? So if you engage people with the why, then that's what takes them with you on your journey. So a lot of the time when we're a challenger industry, okay, we're going up against closed doors. And I know some of you will be familiar with this book because I bang on about it all the time. But this is by a guy called Sam Conifer-Lende. But basically, if you Google Be More Pirate, it's going to come up, okay? And his thing is, pretty much everything you need to know about changing the world as a business, being an agile business, can be learnt from the golden age of piracy, which is 1690 to 1725. And essentially, the life in the Royal Navy was pretty grim. Okay, there was this kind of autocratic system where you did what the captain said, or you got 12 lashes and tied to the mast in the sun for 2 days. And basically what they were doing was running up and down the eastern seaboard, stealing gold from Spanish galleons with the permission of Queen Elizabeth I, the pirate queen. And after a while, the crew on the ship, which was basically a microcosm of English society at the time, which was, I mean, we talk about the 1% nowadays, but that was an unequal society, right? It was peasants and the super rich. And what they said was, well, hang on a minute, all we've got to do is push this prick overboard, right? And we can have our own society and organize it how we like. So that's what they did. And so what happened was immediately they got rid of this top-down society. And they had basically one vote, one pirate, okay? That included female pirates, because there were a few. And that in itself was huge at the time. It included non-white pirates, okay? It included freed slaves that they'd captured and freed to become part of the crew. They had a form of same-sex marriage. They had a social security system. If you lost an eye in a fight, you got 7 pieces of silver. If you lost a leg, you got 8 pieces of gold. You got the choice to be pensioned off to run a bar on some distant island, or you could stay on board and work as the cook and take a non-fighty role. What else did they do? They set up 2 republics, one in Madagascar, one in Nassau. Okay, and at that point, the English government said, right, we've got to stop this, okay? This is getting out of hand. And they did, and they cracked down. But if you're interested, read the book, because basically, they're even implicated, Blackbeard, one of the most famous pirates, when they were reading some of his letters hundreds of years later, they found this correspondence between Blackbeard and the governor of South Carolina, I think it was at the time. And not just correspondence, not just a bit of a payoff. You know, the governor came to one of his many weddings, yeah? So there was this relationship outside the law, but this relationship with the system, which kind of, this guy, Sam, it sort of almost implies that the pirates had a kind of hand in the American Revolution, okay, and the formation of the USA. So worth a read. I'm just going to quickly touch on his central message, which is kind of how you be more pirate. These are his words, but my pink highlights, okay? So the first thing you need to do, if you don't like the system, if you don't like what's happening and how it's done, change it. Start doing something different. Start rewriting the rules, okay? If you don't like the rules, if you don't like how it's been done and how they're going to carry on doing it till we haven't got a planet left, start making your own set of rules. Start a mutiny, okay? And then reorganize the structure of our organizations, yeah? This is basically what I've come to talk to you about today. This pink bit here. That's me, I can go now. All right? This is how it needs to be in the future, okay? I'm okay about business can be the solution, but we need to be a different kind of business. So you will see people turning away in their droves from businesses that are not socially responsible, that are not operated with some degree of fairness, okay? And part of that is getting rid of this culture where people can run whole global economy into the ground and take multi-million-pound bonuses in the same year, okay? Part of this is having diversity in our organizations, people from a range of backgrounds and a range of cultures and a range of genders, okay? And organizations that work in that way and that structure themselves in that way are successful, okay? And then the main thing is weaponize your storytelling, okay? So Coca-Cola is credited with the first global super brand, the Coca-Cola logo from the late 19th century, right? No. The Jolly Roger, okay? That was the first global super brand, okay? If you were on board a ship and you saw a ship coming towards you with a black flag with a skull and crossbones, half the time they didn't even need to fight because they were like, no, you're okay. Come and take it. And by the way, have you got any jobs going? Yeah? So not all doors are closed, right? This is the time. This is the time for hempcrete. This is the time for hemp generally. Okay? There is the stuff is there. It's been written from the UN down. Okay? This is already in. Okay, I don't have an intimate knowledge of US domestic policy, but certainly in the UK and Europe, it's written into policy already what they want to do. It's just that there aren't the providers there aren't the companies at scale who are ready to provide it. So this is a really good document about cannabis generally and how it relates to the UN goals, the Sustainable Development Goals. But how many of those 17, as you're looking at them now, does hempcrete relate to? If not all of them, then nearly all of them, okay? So that's what we need to be working into our storytelling about what we're doing and why it needs to be funded. All countries, well, virtually all countries around the world now, certainly all continents around the world, you'll find a definition in law now of what the bioeconomy is. And yours is as good as any. They're all slightly different. it's a shame it doesn't mention construction. But that can change, and products can cover construction. Hey. This is your circular economy strategy in the US, and this is, I lifted out straight out of the summary document, okay? So there's a lack of radical alternatives, according to your report on the state of the circular economy. So there's the current stuff in that report is addressing needs within the current economic and production model, okay? But if we're going to be more pirate, we're going to have a new economic and production model, okay? Because we do need stuff in the short to medium term, but to actually solve this, we have to have a complete paradigm shift, okay? So, inherent dangers in, oh my goodness, 10 minutes. Inherent dangers in growing hempcrete. Suddenly, everybody is an expert, okay? And that's okay up to a point, but I didn't have to look very far to find something on the internet referring to me as an expert, okay? People are always calling me a hempcrete expert. So let's see what Niels Bohr, famous dead Danish physicist, has to say about experts. Okay? So maybe I'm not an expert, but I'm definitely working towards it. And with that, I thought I'd show you some of my expertise. And things I've learned from other experts, to be fair, but this one is us. So you don't want this, okay? This one is binder not working properly because hemp was really dusty, so the dust sucked up the water and the binder didn't get the water. That was really painful. We had to dig out 40 cubic meters, and I can't translate that into cubic feet on the fly. But we nearly finished the house, put it that way. We had to dig it all out and put it into skips and get rid of it. That was early on. This one was also us, but against our advice. So we had a client in London who was so indecisive, and all of our clients have leanings in that direction. But he was so indecisive that he couldn't decide what hempcrete binder he wanted to use. He wanted to use this new English hempcrete binder that was on the market, which we advised against because we didn't think it was sufficiently tested, and we'd had dealings with the company before, and we said, okay, look, do it, and then we won't, completely kill you on redoing it when it goes wrong. But what he did was he had 3 different hempcrete binders in this big curved wall around the back of his property. So this looks like a stitched together photo, but it's not. That's one hempcrete binder next to another. And this was within 7 days of installation, collapsing, orange mold, black mold. The guy came out from the company, to be fair, and he said, oh, it's too wet here. You haven't installed it properly. It's not suitable. We're overshadowed by that tower block. And we were like, look, mate, there's 2 walls here with your hempcrete with other hempcrete binders that work perfectly well. This one, not even a hempcrete binder. This wasn't us, I hasten to add. This was a product that's, I hope no longer sold in Ireland, called Hemp Limecrete, which was sold to an English self-builder and installed by her builders, and that was a year after installation, and you could push your finger into it like you were pushing it into margarine. This one is plastering too early on hempcrete before it's dried, so the tannins come through from the hemp and stain the plaster. This one is one of the most reliable hempcrete binders on the market, but still, people can manage to mess it up. And this was a builder who'd never used hempcrete before, got the company that was supplying the materials to come out and do a training session on site, and they just gave him terrible advice and messed it up. So again, we had to go back and fix it. This is Mgo Board, which is quite a popular thing, and I want to focus on that a bit because of racking performance. It's tempting to put an Mgo board on. There are different ones on the market. I haven't got time to go into it now, but we can discuss it later. But some of them really prevent water coming out of hempcrete, so you get this mold. That's what the building looks like from outside. This is the same Mgo board again. This was specified by Lime Technology, which is why we've had lots of problems with this in the UK. As you can see, black mold takes years to dry out, causes loads of problems. Now, this is the same building. You can see the staining on the side walls, but the gable wall's completely clean. Took us a little while to work it out. There's 2 ways round you can put the board. So his builders had installed the gables the other way round, and that side doesn't let any water through at all. Okay, so this is not a great picture, but when we look down at the floor, the ply deck that went through the racking board, there was a 2-foot tide mark where all of the water from that hempcrete wall had left through the structural deck. Okay, that's what that house looks like from the outside, and for various reasons, including, so we hempcreted it, but we didn't do any of the rest of it. But for various reasons, including the Mgo board, we couldn't come back and render it for 3 years, and this is in the Scottish Highlands. So this house, with no render or protection from the weather, lasted, was absolutely fine. Okay, the roof was on. You see these bits here? That's filled in because there were little patches of soft hempcrete, and that was because he'd left the scaffolding up for 18 months and the rain had been bouncing off and hitting that point on the wall and it had softened. This is Mgo board again. This is one of the first hempcrete houses in Australia, in Tasmania, and I think there's somebody in this room who's involved in the build, so he'll be able to tell you more about it. But this is a huge structural glue lamb timber that's holding the house up. The spec from Lime Technology or from the Australian architects was to wrap it on underneath and both sides with the Mgo board and fill the hempcrete in around that and leave it in place as permanent formwork. So what happened was it's on the south coast in Tasmania, and they got there was water penetration which came down the wall, collected in the board, and they had to replace the structural timber. Same building again, lots of repair work, sort of 6-7 years after building. So this one's interesting. This is a house we built in Scotland 3 winters ago. And this is a full envelope house, so it's the floor, walls, and roof. We were halfway through installing the hempcrete in the roof when she told us that she'd lost her mortgage financing or some financing, and she didn't have the money to immediately put the wood fibre boards over the top that were going to be protecting this house. So she left it with a tarp over it, huge tarp, for through 18 months. This is the roof, because guess what? Tarps don't stay waterproof. And water was running down and had to be filled in. I've got 2 minutes left, so I'm going to skip through a lot of this. But basically, this is my message, okay? We need to, as Frida says, we need to talk with the bricklayers and the labourers. Okay, we haven't got time to keep reinventing the wheel. So as you guys get going with this, just use us, okay? Because we've been there and done this, and you don't want to spend the next 10 years doing this, okay? You want to get it right from the get-go. My central message. So this is, very quickly, a little bit of our work as our company in the UK. This is insulated lime floors using foam glass. These are some of the houses. We're mostly at a kind of one-off domestic house scale. We do a bit of commercial subcontract. This is the internal finishes, which, as you know, are lime, clay plasters. We do a lot of historic retrofit and repair using hempcrete in traditionally constructed buildings. And then I've just picked a couple of projects to go into a bit more depth on. This is a hempcrete wraparound extension to an old Welsh cottage. But this is like, that's another view of it. This is like a little hempcrete village, because over here, oh sorry, that's the internal view. Over here, we've got the hempcrete extension, we've got a hempcrete workshop built off the garage. This is the hempcrete Pottery Studio. This is the woman is a potter, and then this one here is the sort of annex building that we built first so they could move into that while we did the rest of the work. And that's what that one looks like inside. And here's the Pottery Studio, so this big door at the end, there's 2 rooms, one's got the kiln in, and then the other one is her studio. And so this is hempcrete walls, it's insulated lime floors, and it's natural fiber insulation in the roof. Okay, so hemp fiber and then a wood fiber board over the top to give air tightness. This next house, this is one of our favourite details at the moment, so a combination of hempcrete blocks internally and cast externally. A couple of roof details. It's totally possible to do warm roof buildings with a vapor permeable insulation. You just have to get the detailing right. So there has to be a vented cavity between the airtight wood fiber board and the roof covering to allow the moisture as it comes through the envelope to get vented safely away and not rot your roof structure. And this is the lime floor detail, which I was talking to someone about last night. So you've got this compacted foam glass gravel, which provides a capillary break layer, which is a free drainage insulating capillary break, which comes up to external ground level. And then on top of that, underfloor heating pipes incorporated in a lime sand screed, or possibly sometimes with a hempcrete layer below that as well, and then a cork board perimeter insulation. So here it is in the building, internal block skin, mix up hempcrete. This is our standard way of doing it in a big pan mixer. The shuttering and application of the hempcrete on this building took, well, we were all done and tidied up in 7 days with a team of 6 people. So it's fast, and it's labor intensive, yeah? But as I say, you can get the clients involved if you like. You can achieve with the shuttered boarded method a really tight, sharp finish. When we got to the top, we just cover it to stop water getting into the top of the hempcrete. This is also in Scotland in the winter. This is on Orkney, which is a pretty extreme environment to be building in November. It's right off the north tip of Scotland. And then we just left the hempcrete covered for the local contractor to come and put the wood fiber boards and the insulation on. That's what it looked like, all hempcreted. Main contractors put the roof on. And then we came back and did lime floors internally and the plastering. And finally the rendering when there was a break in the Orkney weather. And there it is, finished. Just very quickly, I'm nearly gone. This is the one we're doing at the moment, which people seem to like because of these curved glue lamps. So what she wanted was an upturned boat. 3 years ago, when she drew it on the back of a fag packet, I said, that's going to be expensive. And lo and behold. So what she's ended up with, this is the one we're on site with at the moment in Scotland, near Inverness. So what she's ended up with is like a mansard roof outside, and then the curved structure inside is going to be lime plastered with those curved glue lamps just stepping out 4 inches out of the plaster. So it's going to be good. Okay, closing thoughts. I like this. Okay. This one again, just because it's so important, okay? And I'm going to give the last word to one of your foremost hempsters. Coming together is a beginning, yeah? And working together is what we need to do. Thank you very much. Cheers, man.
Wow, Alex, thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge and experience. Let's give Alex another round of applause.